Hi guys, welcome to I.N.T.E.N.T. I'm your host Ronlyn, and today I have Sifiso Mtshali, who is going to be discussing his fatherhood journey. Sifiso is an IT salesperson. He works in corporate and he has one son and he's married, for all the ladies that are looking off the market. We're gonna get into it. How are you doing?
Fine, thanks, and you, Ronan.
I'm good. Just give us a brief history. What was it like? What were the emotions when you found out you're going to be a dad?
Yeah, I think that, being a father is one of those things that you sort of never forget. I remember how Mandy's mother, my wife, told me then she had bought clothes and a small sort of vest for the child. And I think we were on a trip, planning a trip going to Cape Town. And I remember the
Mm,
Friday she came over and she gave me a small gift bag. And I was like, what's inside here?
mm,
And it was a child's vest. And I was like, oh, it's like we were planning or thinking about having a child, and she's like, look inside. And I looked inside the gift bag and it was a pregnancy test. And yeah,
mm,
she was pregnant. And I think a wave of emotions came over me, a number of emotions. I think that, becoming a father is never something you're really ready for, you know?
mm,
And yeah, I was quite anxious during the time. I mean, my wife was unemployed at that point in time. And, I think all the time that you imagine everything being perfect and pictory, during that journey, and I wanted it to be
mm,
like that. And I think it was, at the end of the day, it was. I think that when you go through a journey and your child actually survives, that's a very big thing to be grateful for. So yeah,
mm,
I think that when I look back now, I think me as a African men, there was a lot of traditional stuff that had to be done to Mendy's mom as well, which sort of brought me closer to my culture. And it showed me, the thin line between sort of traditional medicine and I want to say alternative medicines as well, and what they can actually
mm,
do for people during their pregnancies as well. So I think it was a lot of learning for me in a number of aspects, in terms of um, the journey itself, how sensitive a woman is during that time, and
mm.
a whole lot of host of things to learn during that time.
So during you and your wife's journey, you got, should I say, introduced to also using the traditional medicine with the
Yes,
Western medicine.
yes.
So if you can disclose what type of traditional medicine.
Yeah, so there's a number of things that need to happen, I think, traditionally to a woman when she's pregnant. One of them is massages. So the massages actually help the child turn.
Mm,
So if he's late in terms of turning, there's specific type of massages that a woman can do later in a trimester, sort of a third trimester, to sort of help turn the baby. There's some medication as well that sort of helps or tries to prevent premature babies as well. And obviously, I think
mm,
the traditional, I want to say, medicine or white medicine that we took is obviously my wife taking supplements during that time, because it's very important to have all over and above the supplements that you're taking, as a pregnant woman, but you need to have more in your system because of the baby. And
mm.
yeah, I think a lot of traditional food being eaten, foods high in protein, for the child development. So yeah, I think a mixture of sort of both helped us through the journey.
Okay, that's very interesting. And what is your cultural background?
So I'm Zulu, and my wife is
Okay.
Tswana, and in both cases we had, and I'm thankful that we both had our grandmothers present in our sort of pregnancy journey during the time where I think, the doctor was saying there's signs that the child could be premature. And I think that's when we'd already started taking, Western medicine, but we realized that we need to focus on traditional medicine as well. And that's what.
I love the fact that, and I did have an episode regarding what you're speaking about, um, where it was about us living in a Western society
Mm,
and being disconnected with our traditional roots,
yes,
whether you
yes,
being Native people. So
100%.
so it's very important to also, just like what you and your wife did in you guys' case, where you were using Western medicine and you also incorporated the traditional medicine. So you also honored your culture. So you
Yes,
infuse the two, which I feel like it's very necessary, especially in terms of passing down such cultural and traditional customs onto our kids, because there's a lot that we don't understand, because we grew up in a very Western society. So it's such a blessing that you and your wife had both your grandmothers present during the time to offload that knowledge. Because had you not gone through that experience where you guys did get a scare and they stepped in and, guided you, and you got that knowledge, and now in terms of going forward, what to incorporate in your lives, or even you as grandparents, what to pass down to your kids. So it's very important for us to acknowledge that our journeys have a significant meaning. Nothing we
mm,
go through in life, as painful as it may seem during that moment, or even as time passes, is done in vain. So even through you guys' journey, you guys learned a lot. Because just imagine if the journey was just smooth, you guys wouldn't have known what you'll know now.
100%.
So thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that. So in that light, what is something that was unexpected in your parenthood journey?
Yeah, I think when I have to look back, one of the things that was unexpected was the so much responsibility. I think that I took it for granted in terms of how much responsibility I would have to have from the day on I found out when my wife was pregnant to now, and guiding the family. I know that a lot of the times people say that the man is the head of the household, and the woman is sort of the body. And yeah, I think that in that journey I realized that it's so much responsibility in terms of forward thinking, future thinking, and sort of
Mm,
planning the dynamics between the family. I think I always tell my wife that there are sort of several relationships that have evolved since our son was born. The first relationship is a relationship I have with myself. The second relationship is a relationship I have with my wife, and the third relationship is a relationship I have with my son. And then the fourth relationship, and I think sometimes people don't take it for granted, is the relationship we have with each other. And those are all relations you still have to nurture as being a dad. But when you're sort of together, it's actually just the relationship with yourself and your wife, and that's it, you know. And I think that an additional, family member adds more relations that needs to be sort of nurtured as well. So yeah, I think a lot of responsibilities in terms of looking at different things that are happening within the family dynamic.
mm. Because also the journey is very different for fathers. I always say for us moms, as soon as we find out we're pregnant, the journey starts. It starts
Mm,
physically, emotionally, our hormones are changing. So already the journey begins before the child even arrives, physically, emotionally, like holistically.
mm,
And we get even more in touch regarding, our spirituality. You pray like you've
mm,
never prayed before during your pregnancy
mm.
journey. And for you guys, it's a lot different because you guys are watching almost from the outside. You guys are watching
Yeah.
us experience this. So obviously the experience is going to be difficult for you guys, even in terms of what you're saying, where
Mm.
it is unexpected in terms of how much responsibility falls on you. What type of emotions did you have regarding, can I say, the heaviness of that responsibility? Did you have anyone to speak to? And I'm asking this in light of Men's Health Month. Um, how did you deal with those emotions?
Mm. Yeah, I think that, that's such a great question, especially in terms of highlighting Men's Health Month is that a lot of the time men don't know how to express their feelings. I think if
Mm,
I try to remember back when, I was going through that journey, I had realized I have so much anxiety. And the anxiety came from the fact that my own father was not really present late on in my life. I've always wanted to be a great father when that happened, but I wasn't sure how. I
mm,
have always been in the space of sort of reading self-help books, sort of motivate myself, becoming a better person, but I've never really read a lot of books about how to become a better father. That actually inspired me to start writing, and a lot of them
mm,
were full of anxiety in terms of what to expect, what what he's going to be like, what type of father I'm going to be to him, what he's going to think of me when he grows up.
mm.
So I think there was a lot of anxiety in terms of anticipation of what to do next.
So, in terms of you coping with your anxiety, you seeked help with self help books. That was your
Yes.
external way of seeking
Yeah.
guidance.
Mm.
That's very important because, in terms of, seeking help, the first thing people look for is other people. And when they don't find guidance in other people, it sort of stops there. There's not a lot of people that look beyond that. For example, self-help books,
Mm.
counseling, journaling. There's a lot of options. But because a lot of people are limited to just seeking help from either their immediate family, whether it's a father. If the father isn't present at that time, then it's uncles. If they don't feel safe or comfortable to speaking to uncles, then it's a grandfather or, whichever male figure that is either in their inner circle, should I say, that they are exposed to. And if they don't have that, then it sort of stops there. And then it becomes
Yeah.
internalized. So I love that you highlighted the fact that you took effort into seeking external help outside of the people that you know. Because we're all
Yes.
different.
Yes.
I always emphasize that our life path is different. Not everyone isn't going to have somebody to speak to. Sometimes it's
Mm.
in books, it's in journaling, it's in an external or third party that doesn't know you, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a fitness trainer. What's your favorite memory of being a father?
Yeah. So my favorite memory of being a father is when my son really started learning how to play soccer.
Mm,
There's a video that always plays in my mind. We're in the front lawn of our yard, and he's just kicking a soccer ball. And yeah, that was a nice summer day that I still remember the clothes he was wearing. I think he was one, one in a
mm.
couple of months. Yeah.
Are you a soccer fan?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I think I
Okay.
at some point in time when I was young, I used to play soccer, but I'm not gonna
Okay.
put that pressure on my son, which is evident already.
Okay. No, because I just wanted to find the link with the
Yeah.
memory of him playing soccer. So I think
Mm.
I was just tying it to the fact that you are a soccer lover. That's why that
Yes.
memory is, one of the core memories.
Yeah.
So unconsciously, you are actually, drawing him to soccer.
Actually, no. So my son actually his first sport is karate.
Nice.
He does karate every Monday and Tuesday. And yeah, I think that we chose a sport for him because I think it's one of the lessons we want to teach him in terms of discipline and sort of consistency and just trying something. And yeah, we chose the sport specifically based on his interest and not, I think, and that was a big lesson for me um, personally because I always imagined his first sport that he's going to play was probably soccer, but we
Mm,
chose karate because it's something. So he likes Power Rangers. He likes
okay.
that show so much. Anything with ninjas, he will watch it for hours. So
Mm,
we chose that because that he resonates with that, and we wanted to teach him to control sort of all his movements and not hurt people. And in karate, it's one of those things they teach you about discipline and listening, and yeah.
Karate is a great sport, not just for the boy child, but I'm going to speak on the boy child because you have a son. Karate is excellent for boys because,
Mm,
as you were saying, bottle up emotions, and it doesn't just start when the boy grows to be a man. It starts from an extremely young age, just because of society, the way we teach our boys to be: don't cry, don't be in touch with your feminine side, etc., etc., which we're trying to um, deviate from. So it's a great way for them to express themselves. So for boys, um, physical sports is very important because they need to steam off. They need to let out emotions. So if you're not letting out your emotions verbally, you need to do it physically because that energy stays in your body, and that's how anger is built up. So it's a great way
yes,
of releasing that energy and releasing it in a
yes,
way that is teaching you discipline. So it's teaching you how to articulate your emotions, not verbally, but physically, how to get that energy out.
physical.
So it's an excellent sport in terms of them getting out any anger, any negative emotions, releasing that energy.
Yes,
So you're saying that was one of your lessons in terms of him doing karate and his first sport not being soccer. So you
yes,
taking his lead in terms of what he likes and putting your ego aside.
100%. I think that my wife and I sort of becoming tuned into listening to our son, because I think that one of the traumas that we faced growing up is that we found that our parents did not listen to us and our choices,
Mm,
and that has an impact on your confidence later on in life because you sort of feel like you
mm,
don't have a voice. So we were conscious
mm,
of some of our traumas. And I think we were conscious of some of our traumas because, and I forgot to mention this earlier, that my wife and I actually, while we were doing our sort of marriage counseling classes, we also went for
mm,
parenting sort of classes as well. And when our child was born, we also went for, sort of when Menzi was about to be baptized at church, we also went for a parenting class as well. So I think we've used a number of avenues to become the best parents
mm,
that we could be for our child. And that's sort of those sort of, I want to say, situations have caused us to reflect on what our traumas are and those that we don't want to pass on to him. And I think we both had identified that, not being listened to affected our confidence, and we wanted to listen to him. So yeah. So I mean, sometimes he does say like he doesn't feel like going to karate, so we listen. But sometimes we see that we need to sort of help him instill the discipline. So he's got a valid reason not to go,
mm,
like, I'm sick, I've got an exam. But yeah, we try and listen to him as best as we can.
mm, mm. So you guys done a lot of introspection and you'll continue. Well, it seems like you'll continue to do so. Where you have to have that internal dialogue so you can tell the difference between whether it's your trauma speaking or whether you're trying to do what's best for your child. Because I think there's a fine line between that. And if you don't do some healing, you guys used external avenues in terms of healing your trauma, which I always say healing is an ongoing journey, um, which resulted in you guys actually listening to your child and actually trying to tell the difference between whether this is trauma speaking or whether it's you actually making a choice where it's going to be in the best interest of your child.
Mm. Yeah, I think that it's important to sort of do that self reflection and self introspection,
Mm,
because it helps guide, I want to say, future decisions, for your child that you take at
mm,
a very young age, and a lot of the times parents, because they don't understand which voice is speaking, like you said, is it my trauma speaking, or is this the good voice of a sound of mind parent? And I think sometimes parents don't understand that sometimes it's a trauma speaking. For example, let's
Mm.
say your child wants to sort of go to their grandparents for a longer than expected period. Parent would rather have the child come back
Mm.
based on the fact that, they did not have a good time when they were with their grandparents. But I think,
Mm.
a parent who would sort of understand that the child needs to bond with their grandparents and needs to be allowed to make that decision themselves at some point in time, wouldn't allow the child to happen. So I think that's a sort of good example to when to understand when it's your trauma speaking or when it's sort of you being a good parent.
Mm. It's true. And the importance of introspection in order to, make that sound decision on which voice is speaking is very important, because it's going to impact our kids in the long run and generations to come. Because everything has a ripple effect. So
100%.
I'm glad that you guys went for a lot of counseling, marital counseling, counseling regarding you guys being parents. It's not very common, especially regarding being parents. A lot of people think, oh my gosh, I'm going to raise my child this way, and this is the only way. So kudos to you guys for, trying to do the most in terms of guiding your child.
Yes, yes. No, I think that yeah, it's a joint effort. I don't want to take all the glory for that. It's a joint
Mm,
effort
mm,
between me and my wife, and trying to, I want to
mm.
say, raise a child that's healed. Or healing ourselves while we
Yeah.
raise our child. I think if I can better put it, because sometimes, and I think that I read somewhere during my parent journey, it said that, your child will always sort of bring out the trauma that you faced, and that's part of being a child, sort of being a parent, is that you need to face the trauma that you sort of lived when you were young and heal from it while being a parent. And yeah, that's a very big ask, depending on what type of trauma a person went through. So yeah, I think it's a lot of effort to just sit down, reflect, and understand your traumas and face them and heal from them and still be a parent.
Mm, 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 mm. Because that's one of the purposes of your child. I always believe that the child you get is the child you're meant to have. No, you aren't only guiding your child is also guiding you. We learn from each other. Because you can learn from anyone. Like, you must never think
Yeah,
you're above someone. You must never think just because you're older than somebody, you can't learn from them. So the child that we have or the kids that we have are there to also be mirrors to us so that we can see, what we need to work on and also help them while helping ourselves, as you said. So it's very important to acknowledge why you became a parent and why you became a parent to the kids that you have. I think that will give you a bigger perspective to life and also to your healing journey. Because let's be honest, our kids are also going to have trauma. That's something that we need to accept. They're going to have trauma from
mm,
us because we are not perfect, just like how we have
yeah,
trauma from our parents because they are not perfect. We are all human. There's always that element of continuous healing, continuous growth. We are never too
mm,
old to grow. So it's a continuous journey, the journey of life. So our kids and our kids' kids are going to have trauma, but it's up to us to decide how they deal with that trauma and what type of trauma they're going to have. So that's how we can
yeah,
change the narrative and going forth. So trauma is going to be there regardless. It's just how we handle it and what type of trauma we pass on to them. I think that's all that we can control. Anything beyond that is up to God.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah, yeah. So speaking about parents, what is something that your parents or parental figure has taught you that has impacted your life or your parenting journey?
Yeah, I think what my mother taught me was that it's very important to make sacrifices for your children. I think my mother raised three kids, all on her own. They went to university, all graduated. My sister's a lawyer.
Mm.
My brother has a degree in psychology, and I've got a BCom degree. So I think she
Hey.
sacrificed a lot. And I think I came to understand that, for you to sort of be a parent, you have to sacrifice. So that's one of the greatest lessons my mother has taught me. And I think that even in my dad's absence, when he's now late, but just about when Menzi was born, or when Menzi was born, those first couple of days, he met Menzi via a video call. And yeah, I think in that time, sort of closing off with him, was that what I learned from him is that you really need to love your kids and don't be afraid to love them. Like we said, we all have different traumas. And yeah, I think my parents had their own traumas, which were different
Mm.
which were different. But I think the two lessons I got from them was, one, from my mother, sacrifice for your kids, and secondly, from my dad, really love your kids and don't be afraid to do so.
Mm. Mm. That's very powerful. I'm gonna highlight something that your dad taught you in terms of, loving your kids unconditionally. It's very important, especially coming from a father. Not a lot of fathers can say that about their father,
Mm,
especially as a black man, as a non-white man in South Africa, where because of the political system, because of apartheid, a lot of fathers had to work away from home,
mm,
which obviously, caused destruction to the family dynamic because of our South African history, not only South African history, let's just say native history, black people history, in terms of the father-child dynamic in the household that was broken. So you learning that from
mm.
your dad is more significant um, than a lot of people may feel, because a lot of people will not resonate. Sadly,
Yeah,
sadly, sadly.
yeah. Unfortunately, it
So
won't.
yeah,
Like you're saying, I
that's
think
the.
that.
Mm. You can continue. Sorry, there's a lag.
Yeah, no, like I said, I think you're correct in saying that because of the, I say, past apartheid systems that sort of broke up the family, the black family nucleus. There's a lot of generation of black fathers that haven't received love, which has been passed on generation to generation. But I think
Mm.
now we're solving that. Yeah,
Mm. 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 We're focusing on solutions and not complaining.
yeah,
We are that generation,
yes.
solution focused. And how do you cope with, the pressures of life, work, marriage, parenting? How do you find the balance, if you do?
Yeah, I think that what I'll say is that, I've got a very good friend system at the moment. And
Mm.
I actually had a session with one of my friends. You may know him, Tsepo Mashiko. Still friends with him. So yeah, I
Okay.
talk to him quite often, in terms of, where I am mentally and emotionally. But yeah, so a lot of the time I think,
Mm.
I pray. I go to, like, I hike a lot, alone,
Mm.
and I take long drives. So my wife will normally know that, because I'm a BMW guy, I'll take the BM, take a long drive and actually process the emotions. I think a lot of the times men sit with the emotions and not process them, and then those
Mm.
emotions that are sitting there, right, become something else because they were not processed. Sometimes it's guilt that's
Mm.
not processed, sometimes it's anger that's not processed. So I think time away from the family to sort of process that, your emotions, it's so important. And I think it's something that I'm trying to get the hang of. Life is busy. Being a parent never stops. It's not a pause button.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. So confiding in your friend or, your loved ones, and also taking time for yourself to process life's happenings.
Mm.
Because it's very important to just have a healthy way of dealing with life. I know with me, I also have time to myself that's needed, whether it's once a week, whether it's twice a week, but I'm going to have time to myself. And also
Mm.
confiding in my loved ones. I also do hiking. Hiking is a great way to get in touch with yourself. Um, Nature, because you're surrounded by nature, plus you're getting the blood flowing, you're walking, you're also breathing in, I don't want to say fresh air, but it's fresher than if you're just sitting at home or if you're in the city. So it's a great way. Being in nature in general is a very great way to process your emotions. There was a study done in terms of it's either depression or anxiety, where they took a group of people and they put them in like a forest, and they were doing these techniques such as hugging a tree, being in that moment, walking barefoot, just being in touch with nature, because we are from the soil. Um, so that also helps in terms of balancing out your emotions, being with nature. So yeah, that's just like some of the techniques that I also use that maybe one of our listeners or viewers may find useful.
Sure, sure.
Mm. And what's something that you would like to pass down to your kids that's non-materialistic?
Yeah, I think that the one thing I really want to pass on to my son is just never losing yourself. I think a lot of the times during growing up, we lose ourselves or our true selves based on the fact that we have to change or fit into a certain narrative, you know. And when I see him, he's
Mm.
such a ball of energy, jumping around, I just hope that he never loses himself, because that's who he is, And sometimes we have to change for, let's say, our partners. We have to change for, work. We have to change because of society. But I think, yeah, if I could ever pass down to anything to him is to never lose him himself.
Mm. Mm. That's very important in this world, because once you lose yourself, it's just a downward spiral.
Yeah,
It really is. Um, in the beginning, you were speaking about you and your wife infusing Western medicine with traditional medicine. I'm highlighting that because you're mentioning instilling that, your son mustn't lose himself or his identity. Um,
yeah,
One of the things we should also pass down in relation to what you said is also in terms of where we come from. And I think you guys are already doing that, as you said in the beginning, in terms of getting more in touch with your culture and your background. Because once we lose our identity, we lose who we are, not only on
yeah,
a surface level, like in terms of, like just family, but also on a traditional and also very important spiritual level. So it's very important for us to try and find out how we came about, what was used back then that we can also use now. Obviously, not everything. Times have changed,
yeah,
and we've become more knowledgeable, more wiser. But that's also very, very important in terms of identity and knowing who we are. Even in terms of, like, for us as non-white Black people, African people, and having our family dynamics basically destroyed, like as we spoke about
mm,
in terms of the father figure in the house. A lot of moms had to be head of the house. I think it also
yes,
goes back to not directly, but it's also indirectly having African moms, like your mom taught you sacrifice. That comes effortlessly for moms. It's like, that has been instilled in them in terms of sacrifice. So even
Mm.
in terms of that, knowing where we come from and how we can change it. If we know where we come from, our true identity, we can provide solutions. If we don't know, we
Yes,
cannot provide the actual solutions in order to cure the root. So what you said
yes,
is very
that's
powerful
profound.
in terms of making sure that your child knows who they are. It's much more than just surface level of just knowing, you know what, I'm strong, I'm confident. My father is Mr. Mtshali. I can do whatever, like I can
Mm.
be whoever I
Mm.
want to be, type of thing. The
Mm.
best karate person in the world. It's more than that. I find that is just surface level.
Mm.
Yeah, it's more than that. That counts, but we have
But
to
yeah.
also dig deeper. And I think you and your wife are already doing that, as you said in the beginning, from the
Mm.
beginning of your parenthood journey.
Mm. Yeah, so you touch on something very profound in terms of, in depth of who a person is, and, and just saying, I am strong, I am brave, and that reminds me of the affirmations my son has to do every night before he sleeps. Sometimes he's very
Mm,
irritated when he has to do them, but nonetheless he has to do them because, like you're saying, I think you need to sort of instill certain principles in your child at a very young age when you can to sort of remind them, so when they are older, they have triggers that, that's the little voice that you're putting inside them. When you talk to your child every day, whether you shout at them, whether you scream at them, that projection that you say to them stays with them. So it's very important how you speak to your child. Secondly, how you allow themselves to speak to themselves from a young age. So my son does affirmations, before he goes to sleep after the bedtime story, and sometimes in the morning when you
mm,
remember. But yeah, it's important to sort of instill those values in terms of who he is, so that he can equip himself and always remember where he comes from. The deep roots.
mm,
We are. I think in African spirituality, they always say we are connected like a tree. So he can sort of understand where his roots come from.
mm, 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 mm. I know for me, even though I may shout, I think it's also just with us moms in general,
Yeah, it's
shouting
his
at our
mom's. It's
kids.
just mom's.
Um, but they still know that it comes from a place of love. It's just tough love. Sometimes we have to give tough love.
Mm.
Sometimes we
Yes.
need to really be extremely nurturing. We need to have a balance of both because of the world we live in.
Mm.
We're also prepping them for later on in life.
Mm. Yeah.
So it's very important for us to make sure they believe in themselves. Because if they believe in themselves, no matter what anyone says, no matter what circumstances they are, situations, they know that they are capable. They know that they are worthy, they are enough, and they can take up space anywhere. So I love that you guys are doing affirmations with your child. I love that. This was a lovely conversation. It is very enlightening.
Thank you all for the opportunity as well. It's given me an opportunity to reflect on the journey that
Mm,
I've had as a father, perhaps some of the things I need to look into, as well. And yeah, I think this conversation has
mm,
helped me to reflect in terms of my journey as a father, and things I need to look into as well.
mm. Thank you so much, Sifiso, for being on the channel, for sharing your fatherhood experience, your parenthood experience that you and your wife embark, and some techniques you use in terms of coping with life. You guys use affirmations.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I think just the last words I have for everybody is that be gentle on yourself. Parenting is
Mm,
a journey. It's not a one stop. So sometimes you have to be patient. Sometimes you have to sort of think about the future and how you want it potentially to be. And if it doesn't turn out like that, you shouldn't sort of ostracize yourself, and always be kind to yourself as a man as well. I think fatherhood especially when you haven't had a lot of support in your journey, is a challenging one. So yeah, be kind to yourself.
Okay. Thank you so much for being on the platform and sharing some wisdom and knowledge. To my listeners and viewers, until next time, let's keep living with intent. Bye.
Bye.